Why are you entrusting our newborn baby to my sister every day? My husband's call interrupted my day. His usually calm voice was tinged with unexpected anger. Rapidly, I sought to dispel the misunderstanding. Our daughter is at home, sleeping, I assure him. Surprised, his tone shifted. Really? He exclaimed. Confusion enveloped us both as questions arose. I'll speak with my sister-in-law to uncover the truth, I resolved. I reached out to my sister-in-law, Marissa, and uncovered a startling truth. Let me introduce myself. I'm Linda, married to Bob for 3 years, just a year younger than him. Our joy was recently doubled with the arrival of our daughter Hannah. She's the epitome of cuteness, but being a first-time mom has its challenges. With my parents living far away, I didn't have the luxury of heading back home after childbirth. Since leaving the hospital, I've been navigating this new world solo during the day. I must admit, I've been getting by, largely thanks to Bob's unwavering support. Despite his long work hours, he's always there for Hannah and me, never once complaining. His gentle demeanor eases any parenting stresses I encounter. Whether it's struggling to soothe Hannah to sleep or tending to her cries in the dead of night, his presence has been a lifeline, and I'm immensely grateful for it. So you can imagine my shock when he called, his voice laced with unexpected frustration. Linda. Mom just called me. What's going on? He demanded. Confused, I replied, your mom? What are you talking about? Why would we leave our newborn with Marissa every day? His mention of Marissa caught me off guard. She's Bob's sister, residing just a short walk away with their parents. Marissa, working from home, also takes care of her mother, making her quite flexible with her time. My husband's critique persisted. Leaving a 3-week-old baby, I couldn't fathom doing that. Marissa hasn't cared for a baby before. I get that you're tired post-birth, but you should have talked to me before entrusting her to Marissa, he expressed, his worry palpable. His distress signaled that this was no ordinary misunderstanding. Wait, I'm lost. Marissa caring for a newborn. Why did your mom call you? Why would I need your consultation? What do you mean, leaving Hannah with Marissa? Have I been doing that? I countered, utterly bewildered. It's been nearly 2 weeks. Marissa didn't complain, not wanting to strain your relationship, but Mom couldn't stay silent, he clarified. Bob's revelation stunned me. It was a narrative I had no recollection of, with my daughter right beside me. With numerous questions swirling, I prioritized clearing the confusion. Swiftly, I assured him, our daughter's at home, asleep. She's right here with me. Bob's astonishment resurfaced. What do you mean? He inquired. I'm just as confused as you are. Honestly, I've been following the advice to keep newborns indoors, so besides medical appointments, I haven't been anywhere. I haven't even visited your family's house, and it's been a while since Marissa came over after Hannah's birth, I clarified. Then whose baby is Marissa caring for? Bob pondered aloud. I wish I knew. Why would Marissa fabricate looking after our baby? Each question seemed to spiral into another, leaving us both puzzled. As the lunch break chimes sounded through the phone, I made a decision. I need to speak with Marissa. I want to understand why she might concoct such a lie. If there's a misunderstanding and she thinks she's caring for Hannah, that's concerning. I'll also call Mom, I announced. Bob paused before expressing his regret. I'm sorry for doubting you. I was just really worried about Hannah. It's all right. You're concerned about Hannah, aren't you? Besides, when I told you she's right here, you didn't doubt me. You trusted me, I comforted him. After our call ended, I wasted no time dialing my sister-in-law's number. Marissa, do you have a moment? There's something I need to discuss, I started. Linda, I need to talk to you too, Marissa replied. Marissa and Bob are close in age, which is why she's the same age as me despite being my sister-in-law. We've always had a good relationship, even going out together when I was dating Bob. So, it puzzled me why she hadn't mentioned anything about this situation. I couldn't fathom why she would fabricate such a story. Well, now's a good time. Bob just filled me in. Marissa, what's this about you looking after Hannah? I haven't left her with anyone, I questioned, bewildered. Marissa's surprised voice followed, accompanied by the sound of a crying baby. It seemed she was indeed tending to an infant. Listening to Marissa's reaction, a realization dawned on me. Marissa wasn't fabricating anything, she genuinely believed she was caring for Hannah. To dispel her misconception, I began to explain the truth. To dispel her misconception, I began to explain the truth. Hannah's right here with me, fast asleep. I'm really baffled by all of this. But how did you end up with a baby, Marissa? And why did you think it was Hannah? I asked, seeking clarity. Marissa replied, shedding light on the situation. Last week, Dad dropped off a baby with me. He said, Linda seems overwhelmed, so you should assist her with the baby. This revelation left me dumbfounded. Then Marissa disclosed another shocking detail. I was terrified because I've never cared for a baby. I hadn't heard from you, Linda. And when I considered calling you, Dad warned, if you contact Linda, she'll just stress out. Show some consideration for your sister-in-law. I have my own responsibilities, even when I'm at home. It appeared that my father-in-law's deceit initiated this chaos, but the identity of the child Marissa was caring for remained unclear. Thinking that confronting my father-in-law directly might resolve the confusion, I inquired if he was home. Unfortunately, he's out at the moment. Lately, he returns home late in the evening, takes the child Marissa's been tending to, claiming he'll return her to Linda, then leaves again. He usually returns in about 20 to 30 minutes, Marissa explained. Frustrated by my father-in-law's manipulation involving my daughter and me, I felt compelled to address the situation head-on. I understand. I'll discuss this with Bob, but we might visit tonight, I decided before ending the call. I promptly emailed my husband, detailing what I learned from his sister. We should ask Dad directly, came the suggestion. So when Bob returned home, we made our way to my in-laws. Along the journey, Bob recounted his conversation with his mother. Mom was also quite upset to discover that the child she thought was her grandchild wasn't. That's a significant shock, isn't it? I didn't envision Hannah's first family gathering unfolding like this. It's quite a complicated situation, he elaborated. Due to her back issues, his mother hadn't met our daughter yet. I had hoped to introduce Hannah to her once she was ready to venture out after a month. But now, I found myself disheartened that our introduction had to occur amidst such turmoil. Upon reaching my in-laws' home, we found my mother-in-law and sister-in-law both appearing bewildered as we entered. Marissa spoke up. Bob, Linda, Dad mentioned he would return the child we've been caring for, but he hasn't returned yet. Understanding the situation, Bob intervened. I see, Mom. Despite the confusion, this is our daughter Hannah. With that, I brought Hannah closer to my mother-in-law. Upon laying eyes on Hannah, my mother-in-law's expression softened. She's absolutely adorable. She bears a striking resemblance to Bob when he was a baby. I'm thrilled to finally meet her, and Linda, you've done remarkably well. I'm sorry you've been entangled in all of this, she expressed with sincerity. It's alright. I'm just as perplexed as everyone else, I responded. Just as I spoke, Marissa chimed in. I'm baffled too. Who is this child I've been caring for? I don't understand why Dad would lie like this. I've been putting in so much effort, believing it was Hannah. He should consider my feelings too. Marissa's frustration mirrored my own towards our father-in-law. Attempting to lighten the mood, Bob interjected, but Marissa, you've met Hannah before. You should have noticed it's a different baby. Well, don't all babies look alike? I thought something was off. But I assumed babies' appearances change quickly. Marissa hastily defended herself. At that moment, our father-in-law returned. I'm back. Wait, why are Bob and Linda here? Our father-in-law's panic was palpable. This deception stemmed from him. The rest of us shared disapproving glances, each silently accusing him. Struggling under the tension, our father-in-law began to stutter. Oh, Linda, it's been some time. What brings you here? Did you forget something? He attempted to divert attention. Turning to Marissa, he added, Marissa, what's going on? I asked you to check for forgotten items. I seethed with anger at our father-in-law's manipulation, using mine and my daughter's names in his deceit and then shifting the blame onto Marissa. I instinctively held my daughter closer, feeling the tension radiate through the room. Both my husband and sister-in-law shared the same sentiment, their fists clenched in frustration. It was me who broke the silence, the anger evident in my voice. Dad, seriously, are you honestly saying that? This is beyond unacceptable even for you. What do you mean? My father-in-law seemed startled by the intensity of my tone. My husband and sister-in-law echoed my sentiments, demanding answers. Dad, explain yourself. Linda has never left Hannah with anyone. Why would you fabricate such a lie? There must be a reason for someone to care for a stranger's newborn, right? That's correct. You manipulated me into caring for a child. Who is this baby? I'm terrified, even if it's my nephew's, let alone a stranger's. I won't tolerate it anymore, Marissa interjected with rapid-fire conviction. My father-in-law was speechless, while the three of us continued to glare at him, demanding the truth. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was different. She turned pale, murmuring, "No, it can't be. You're not still involved with her?" Her words left my husband, sister-in-law, and me stunned. My father-in-law began to sweat, feigning innocence. What are you talking about?" he stuttered, attempting to deflect. But my typically calm husband had reached his limit. "Dad, enough with the act. You've been playing dumb all along. Do you think you can deceive us? We know you've been lying about everything. Just come clean." "Wait, Bob, please calm down." I attempted to intervene, but my husband persisted. "Dad, you've been manipulating Linda and Hannah to cover up your deceit, and you owe Marissa an apology. Caring for a newborn is a monumental responsibility, even if it's your own child. Consider how overwhelming it must have been for Marissa, who has never experienced parenthood before." Once he started, my husband couldn't halt his tirade. Despite whatever excuses our father-in-law might conjure, my husband remained steadfast. Perhaps realizing he couldn't evade the truth any longer, my father-in-law spoke softly, and then he confessed to the unbelievable truth. "That child is mine." At his admission, my husband's momentum dissipated, his mouth hanging agape in disbelief. Marissa and I were equally stunned into silence. It was my mother-in-law who shattered the quiet. Her voice quivered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I knew it. You're still involved with her. I was foolish to forgive you before." "Involved with her?" my husband queried, puzzled. In response, our father-in-law's complexion paled even further. Ignoring him, my mother-in-law continued, "He had an affair. It happened around the time you two were getting married, about 3 years ago. He promised me he'd never do it again, and I forgave him. But now, that's why I thought Hannah bore a resemblance to Bob. She's his flesh and blood after all. I thought she was my true grandchild." Unable to contain her emotions any longer, my mother-in-law broke into tears. Witnessing her distress only fueled my anger towards my father-in-law. My husband regained his composure, unleashing his wrath upon our father-in-law. "You're despicable, Dad. You not only deceived us but betrayed Mom twice. How could you stoop so low? I can't fathom that someone like you is our father." Bob's outburst was followed by Marissa's incredulous response. "What do you mean by my child? Are you joking? You had a child with your mistress and left it with me? I can't believe this. How could you do something so despicable? I never want to see your face again." Despite the scathing remarks from his own children, our father-in-law merely chuckled and remarked, "Calm down. There's nothing we can do about what's already happened. The mistress didn't want to marry me or anything like that. She just didn't have any money, so she had to work. In the meantime, I had to take care of the child." I couldn't bear witnessing my father-in-law's callousness. "Enough," I interjected, my voice trembling with anger. "This isn't a laughing matter. A life has been brought into this world. Do you grasp the gravity of that at your age?" My father-in-law seemed taken aback, losing his balance and falling onto the ground. However, instead of offering assistance, Bob and Marissa hurled insults. "You worthless old man, you're no longer our father. I can't even stand to look at you. Get out of our sight," they exclaimed. Even faced with their fury, my father-in-law attempted to downplay the situation, saying, "Don't say such things." My lips tensed as I stared daggers at my father-in-law. "I no longer have the patience to tolerate someone like you. Let's get divorced," I declared firmly. My father-in-law's smile vanished, his face contorting with wrinkles as he became serious. "But didn't you forgive me last time?" he pleaded. However, his attempt at manipulation was futile. "Yes, I forgave you for your infidelity, but I won't tolerate your disrespect any longer," I retorted. "If having you out of our lives brings peace to our home, then so be it. And as for my survival, I'll manage just fine without you," I added. As my father-in-law clung to my mother-in-law's feet, I watched him with disdain. Bob and Marissa mirrored my sentiments, their gazes cold and unwavering. It was evident that everyone in the room had reached their limit with my father-in-law. Marissa erupted in anger. I'll take care of Mom, so we'll be fine without you. But how do you plan to live? You've always relied on Mom for everything from cooking to laundry. Marissa's words visibly rattled my father-in-law. He turned to my mother-in-law with pleading eyes. You wouldn't leave me, would you? We spent decades together. You can't imagine life without me, can you? However, his hopes were swiftly dashed as my mother-in-law shook off his clinging arm. Stop kidding yourself. How much do you need to degrade people to feel satisfied? Who would want to stay with a cheater like you? I'm filing for divorce right now. If you're so fond of her, why don't you go be with your mistress? My mother-in-law snapped, her voice firm and resolute. What? Wait, let's talk. We can fix this. That woman meant nothing to me. You're the only one I love. My father-in-law pleaded, clutching onto my mother-in-law once more, but he was met with another wave of Marissa's fury. Talking to someone who refuses to acknowledge their mistakes is pointless. We're leaving this place soon, and Mom is coming with us. Until we're gone, stay away from home, Dad. I never want to see you again. Now get out. Marissa demanded, attempting to forcefully escort my father-in-law out. When he refused to budge, Bob had to physically drag him away. Please wait. Give me another chance, just one more. My father-in-law pleaded until the very end, but his pleas fell on deaf ears as nobody paid him any attention. As Marissa had foreseen, my father-in-law's life spiraled into chaos. Struggling to manage even the simplest tasks, he found himself unable to tolerate the growing clutter and filth in his home. Desperate for assistance, he turned to his mistress, only to be met with rejection at her doorstep. It appeared she had no intention of marrying him either. With no one left to care for the children, his mistress was unable to work, leading to financial strain. She began pressing my father-in-law for alimony, even resorting to legal action to secure child support. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law relocated to an apartment not far from ours. As over a month had passed since Hannah's birth, I started visiting them more frequently, accompanied by Hannah. I maintained my amicable relationship with Marissa, acting as if nothing had changed, and my bond with my mother-in-law remained strong. Moving forward, I'm determined to raise my daughter to the best of my abilities, with the support of my husband, sister-in-law, and mother-in-law by my side.
You think you can just accuse me of cheating while I was away on business and demand a divorce? My husband, Jackson, bellowed through the phone. It should have been a jolting moment, but I knew better. This was just his attempt at stirring up drama. I already sold it. And you know what? I could practically feel his emotions quivering on the other end. Did he honestly believe I wouldn't see through his little charade? His naivety was almost comical. As his accusations continued to ricochet off my resolve, I found myself teetering between anger and amusement. Yet, amidst it all, a sense of empowerment began to emerge. This wasn't just a spat. This was a turning point. This was the moment I decided to take control. I chuckled inwardly at his feeble attempt to manipulate me. And then, as if the universe had aligned, a realization dawned on me. It was my turn to play. I'm Olivia, a 28-year-old working mom. Though I've held a steady job at a college store since I graduated from junior college at 20, Jackson's career trajectory has been less than stable. He's 2 years older, but when we first met 3 years ago, he was bouncing between jobs or sometimes doing nothing at all. He proposed to me hastily, but I set a condition. He needed to secure a stable job. I wasn't about to embark on a marriage without considering our future. Okay, but there's a condition, I asserted firmly, watching Jackson's expression shift to one of concern. What is it? He asked cautiously. You need to find a stable job. Otherwise, marriage is out of the question. We need to think about our future. He attempted to brush it off with a casual remark. Oh, don't worry, you're working, so there's no rush, right? But my parents would be concerned if I married without a job. I'll find one before we tie the knot, he promised, sensing the seriousness in my tone. Reluctantly, Jackson embarked on his job search journey. Eventually, he secured an office position at a construction company, and we moved forward with our plans to wed. At the time, I saw Jackson as somewhat careless with money and work, but I believed our partnership could balance each other out. I thought I could guide him towards financial responsibility, and he would complement my strengths. Little did I know, our challenges were just beginning. About a year into our marriage, as we were exploring the idea of buying a house, Jackson revealed a troubling obstacle. I might not qualify for a loan, he confessed casually. I was taken aback. What do you mean? I pressed for an explanation. He shrugged. Because I haven't been at my job long enough, I might need a guarantor for the loan. The only option would be my dad, but he's dealing with some serious gambling debts. He probably wouldn't be able to help. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? I was dumbfounded, especially with the contract and the real estate agent right in front of us. But Jackson, appearing unfazed, nonchalantly remarked, "If we put the house in your name, it'll be fine, right? You've been at your job forever, so you can secure the loan. We'll both contribute to paying it off. It's just a formality." That's beside the point. Why didn't you bring this up before? This is significant for me too. I'm not even prepared with the paperwork, I retorted, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Though he offered an apology, his contrition felt superficial, lacking sincerity. Despite my urge to protest further, faced with the already arranged contract and the presence of the agent, I decided against escalating the situation. Reluctantly, I hastily gathered the necessary documents, such as my income statement, for the loan application, and impulsively finalized the purchase under my name. Doubt not at me. Could I truly envision a future with this man? Perhaps I should have simply asserted, "Then we won't proceed," instead of hastily preparing the paperwork. My anxiety heightened with the looming issue of my in-laws. The other day, I had a conversation with Dad, Jackson began. He mentioned he might lose the house due to the debt I mentioned earlier, so he's considering moving in with us. Is that all right? What? Why would you even entertain that idea? I reacted swiftly, but Jackson merely shrugged it off. Well, he's facing difficulties. My brother is single, but he's working abroad. I'm the only one Dad can turn to. Shouldn't we seriously discuss this? Maybe he can stay temporarily until he finds a place, but committing to living with us permanently is a major decision. Jackson scowled. You just don't want him to stay, do you? If he moves in, we can divide the living expenses. You're always going on about money. You mean the money you never contribute? You promised we'd split the mortgage, but it's only coming out of my paycheck. You haven't given your share. In marriage, finances are shared. It's not just your money, it's ours. It's deducted from your account because the house is in your name. Stop being so self-centered, I exclaimed, frustration evident in my tone. But Jackson simply muttered, "I hate discussing money," before storming out of the room. Such disputes became a regular occurrence. Every time, Jackson would brush off my concerns and eventually retreat. No resolution was ever reached. However, Jackson wasn't entirely inactive regarding his family's predicament. As part of his role in construction site administration, he frequently dealt with real estate contracts. He often consulted a specific agency on how to secure the best price for selling his family's home and the necessary procedures involved. I overheard these discussions repeatedly, finding solace in the fact that I wasn't alone in contemplating this matter. Yet the prospect of my in-laws moving in with us post-sale, as if it were a foregone conclusion, continued to unsettle me. Jackson began attending meetings with real estate agents and my in-laws without involving me, and he started spending more weekends away from home. Eventually, he embarked on a lengthy business trip lasting several months, necessitated by the distance of the construction site he was overseeing. It wasn't apparent to me then that the seeds of our power struggle had already been sown. A few days after Jackson departed for his trip, I decided to treat myself to tea after a shopping excursion. Hello, the man who greeted me seemed familiar. Memories flooded back, recalling him as someone Jackson had once brought home. He worked at a real estate company, a young employee named Samuel, according to Jackson. Samuel had been with the company for less than a year. Ah, yes, I remember you. You visited our house before, right? Yes, I apologize for dropping by unannounced and even joining for a meal. My apologies. No need to worry. I should have been more welcoming. We ended up sharing tea together. Samuel was affable and appeared more level-headed than Jackson, despite his youth. As we conversed over tea, we found common ground and eventually bid each other farewell. At that moment, I couldn't fathom that this brief encounter would later be twisted into an accusation of infidelity. Yet that's precisely what happened when Jackson confronted me. "You've been cheating on me while I was away, haven't you? We're getting a divorce. Give the house to my parents and leave. Immediately." Jackson's accusation hit me like a sledgehammer. In that moment, I couldn't help but wonder if the rumors were true. Jackson had evidently been spreading falsehoods, fabricating a narrative of my infidelity to justify his desire for divorce. And the bearer of this false tale was none other than Samuel, the man Jackson unjustly accused me of having an affair with. He showed up at my doorstep the day after our tea. "I apologize for the sudden visit yesterday. Jackson asked me to reach out to you," Samuel confessed as he stood at my doorway. Shock and confusion washed over me, but I invited him inside, eager to hear his story. What he revealed left me stunned. Jackson had orchestrated a plan to frame me for infidelity, all in a bid to secure a divorce. Samuel was roped into fabricating evidence to support this scheme. There were two motives driving Jackson's deceitful agenda. Firstly, he coveted our house, fearing the potential loss of his parents-in-law's property. Jackson saw cohabiting with his parents as the easiest solution, but my resistance to the idea led him to devise a plan to oust me and claim the property. Secondly, Jackson was involved in an affair of his own, spending weekends with his mistress while pretending to discuss matters with my parents-in-law. His infatuation with her led him to view me, his wife, as an impediment. By framing me for infidelity, he hoped to secure both the house and compensation in the divorce settlement. Despite my perception of Jackson's lack of astuteness, his cunning nature in orchestrating such a devious plan was truly despicable. As I muttered my disdain, Samuel offered his apologies. However, I had no intention of aiding Jackson in his malicious scheme. I feigned cooperation, all the while plotting to turn the tables on him. Samuel, leveraging his expertise in real estate, offered various suggestions. Eventually, he proposed a daring move. "You should sell the house while Jackson is away on his trip." And so, when Jackson returned, bewildered by the news of the sale, I delivered the final blow. "I know everything, Jackson." Samuel recorded everything, including your attempt to frame me for cheating with him. "If we proceed with divorce, I can claim alimony and take you to court," I declared, relishing the shock that registered on Jackson's face. Why, he stammered, but I wasn't finished. I had one last card to play. "You might not have realized, but Samuel isn't just any new employee. He's the son of the company's CEO," I emphasized, incredulous at Jackson's obliviousness. "Didn't you notice Samuel shares the same last name as the CEO? How did that escape your notice?" I pressed, my frustration mounting. "Well, Samuel's last name isn't exactly uncommon," Jackson attempted to rationalize. "Are you serious right now?" I couldn't believe his lack of awareness. "Yes, I'm serious," Jackson replied, his shock palpable. The realization dawned on him slowly. Samuel's company was one of Jackson's most crucial clients, and they had played a significant role in handling his family's property matters. If news of this deceit reached the CEO, Jackson would undoubtedly find himself in hot water. In fact, Samuel had likely already reported the situation. "Look, fine, I'll check it out. But if you're lying, I'll figure it out." Jackson relented before abruptly ending the call. It didn't take long for him to realize the gravity of his actions. Subsequently, the real estate company owned by Samuel's father refused to engage in any business dealings with Jackson or offer him advice regarding his family property. With my house sold, Jackson had no option but to return to his family home following his business trip. Fortunately, Samuel had assisted me in finding an affordable apartment, so I encountered no difficulties. As I initiated the divorce proceedings, Jackson persisted in reaching out to me. "I'm sorry, Olivia. Please forgive me, he pleaded. It's too late for apologies now. You tried to manipulate me using someone else. Why should I believe anything you say? I countered. Don't say that. After our divorce, you can be with that other woman, right? That's what you wanted, isn't it? He suggested, attempting to deflect blame. Yeah, she had someone else she liked and dumped me. What a sorry tale. But just because of that, don't expect me to change my mind and come running back to you. I muttered as I ended the call with a heavy sigh. Despite not disclosing my current address to him in hopes of keeping him at bay, Jackson's incessant calls persisted. Each time he pleaded, "Please don't leave me. I'll change. I'll be a better husband." Yet I was weary of his hollow promises. Once the divorce is finalized, I'll delete his number, block him on WhatsApp, and sever ties completely. To make matters worse, even my mother-in-law reached out, begging, "Please, Olivia, we'll be lost without you. It's not me you wanted, it's the house, right?" But there's no house left, I reminded her. It wasn't just about the house. We're not that heartless. Come back and you'll understand, she implored. You wanted the money, didn't you? I shot back, frustration seeping into my voice. That's not true. You're being unfair. You attempted to coerce me into living with you, and when I refused, Jackson resorted to deceit to gain leverage in the divorce. I can't trust someone who resorts to such tactics, I asserted firmly. It's obvious you're only interested in money. I continued to rebuff their pleas. Then my father-in-law called, his tone dripping with arrogance. Isn't it your duty as a daughter-in-law to assist my wife a little? Are you seriously refusing? Isn't all of this a consequence of the debts you've accumulated? I countered, my resolve unwavering. In response, his voice on the phone grew so loud that it hurt my ears. You heartless woman, abandoning your mother-in-law in her time of need and shifting blame onto her. I'll teach you a lesson, you wicked woman. With that, I ended the call, shaken but determined. Armed with the recorded audio, I sought counsel from my lawyer. As it transpired, my father-in-law's words constituted a threat. Armed with this evidence, I informed Jackson that I'd pursue legal action if he didn't agree to the divorce. In a panic, Jackson reluctantly consented to the divorce. Finally, I was free from the clutches of that outrageous family. After the divorce, Jackson's reputation at work suffered, leading to a loss of trust and diminished responsibilities. Additionally, the unresolved debt forced him to sell his family home at a steep discount. Now, he resides in a modest apartment with his parents, grappling with a reduced salary and the burden of supporting his family. To compound his challenges, he is obligated to pay me alimony. Learning about Jackson's struggles firsthand from Samuel, who remained a confidant, I discovered an opportunity to leverage my customer service skills from my previous role at a clothing store. Samuel, now working in the HR department of a real estate company, recommended me for a position that required strong communication abilities. After careful consideration and discussions with Samuel, I accepted the offer and transitioned to the real estate company. Throughout this transition, Samuel and I maintained our close bond, which eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. After a year of dating, we tied the knot, and I became the spouse of the future company president. Jackson likely never envisioned that the two individuals he attempted to falsely accuse of infidelity would ultimately find love and marry each other. Now surrounded by my supportive new family, including my in-laws, I look forward to building a beautiful life together with Samuel. Our family consists of 4 members, including our parents. Emily takes after our mom in terms of personality. She's friendly but can be a bit lazy at times. She enjoys teasing my dad and me, as we are more sincere individuals. When we were kids, our mom, who shares a similar temperament with Emily, had a soft spot for her. It was pretty clear that she favored Emily over me. Whenever she hung out with friends, it was always Emily who got to go, leaving me behind because, according to her, it's embarrassing to introduce plain and quiet Ashley to her friends. On the flip side, Mom was really proud of Emily, who was outgoing and well-liked whenever they went out. Despite having a mom and sister like that, the reason I could stay positive was because of my dad. He appreciated my sincerity and loved both Emily and me equally. I cherished my dad's fair approach. Even as an adult, my mom's treatment of me didn't change much. Thankfully, my dad's presence kept our family balanced and stable. However, when my father retired at the age of 65, a mishap occurred at home. He stumbled over a small step, resulting in a broken bone. Despite his efforts with surgery and rehabilitation, his aging muscles didn't bounce back easily. As he spent more time confined to bed and in need of care, my mother and Emily grew colder towards him. "Hey Mom, what do you think about this?" "Yeah, it looks good. The food seems delicious too. Maybe we should go with this one." While glancing at a guidebook, my mother and Emily excitedly discussed their plans. When I inquired about their conversation, my mother replied with a hint of irritation. They were organizing a family trip, but considering Dad's mobility challenges, I pointed out that traveling might be tough for him. In response to my comment, Emily said with a smile, "Well, we're not planning to bring him in the first place. We intend to leave him at home. That's cruel. It would be tough for him if he's left alone. If Dad's not coming, I'll stay home with him," I declared. After expressing this, my mother and Emily exchanged smiles. Following that, my mother stated, "That's fine too. If that's the case, Emily and I will just go by ourselves. Whether you two come or not is up to you. But since it's a family trip, we'll be using money from Dad's bank account." A quick look at the guidebook revealed they had chosen a room meant for only 2 people. It was evident they never intended to bring my father or me along. Following that, my mother and Emily frequently ventured out on their own, staying at upscale inns and dining at renowned restaurants. It felt as if neither my father nor I existed in the house. I observed their actions from a distance, working diligently to complete my tasks quickly to attend to my father. When I couldn't manage everything alone, I sought assistance from care services for tasks like bathing and accompanying my father on short walks around the neighborhood. On days when I had to work late, I asked my mother and Emily to look after my father. However, they avoided the responsibility. "Ashley, I came to help with the bath, but is there no one at home today?" Upon receiving a notification from the care service staff, I promptly called my mother and Emily. Despite informing them of the staff's visit in advance, they had left my father alone and gone out. When they finally returned home, I confronted them, but there was no apology. The staff are professionals, right? It's okay even if we aren't there. Dad is an adult. He'll be fine being left alone. We don't want our time taken up caring for him like you. It seemed they genuinely believed they were doing nothing wrong. Realizing I couldn't rely on them, I decided that taking care of my father was my responsibility. I juggled work and caregiving. The daily grind was far from easy, especially since neither my mother nor Emily showed any concern or understanding. As the days passed, my father's condition worsened. He spent more time seated than walking and ate much less. Approaching the 9th year of caring for my father, I grew worried about his frail appearance. When I took him to the hospital, a shocking diagnosis awaited me. "Your father has advanced cancer. It can't be." Realizing that our time with him might be limited, I was determined to support him in his final days. I made the difficult decision to quit my job and become his full-time caregiver. I knew I had to share this with my mother and Emily. Their reactions were quite unexpected. When I told them about his condition, my mother remarked, "Really? He never drank or smoked. It's unfortunate that such a sincere person ended up with cancer." Emily, looking stunned, said, "I can't believe you give up your job to take care of Dad. I'd never make that choice." I expected them to be concerned about him, but there was no sign of it. Their indifference surprised me, as if it was someone else's problem. In the end, they only visited him briefly in the hospital and never made a proper visit. I provided daily support during his chemotherapy treatments. Despite our efforts, the cancer continued to progress, and 6 months later, he passed away. The days following the diagnosis were a blur. Upon learning of his death, my mother and Emily had a private discussion and left me to organize the funeral alone. Then they disappeared somewhere. I didn't even have the time to mourn my father, as I had to handle the funeral arrangements alone. As the funeral commenced, my mother took the stage to deliver the chief mourner's speech. Despite not having contributed much, she put on a public face, irritating me, but the funeral proceeded smoothly. Exhausted as I returned home, my mother and Emily, who had already arrived, invited me to the living room, claiming they had something to discuss. Without considering my fatigue, my mother abruptly announced, "Regarding your father's inheritance, Emily and I will inherit this house and all other assets." Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to discuss inheritance on the very day my father passed away. However, Emily chimed in, "We even have a proper will. Look." She proudly presented a document and began to explain, "Right after Dad was admitted to the hospital, Mom and I visited him and had him sign this. It states that you won't inherit anything." Dad agreed to it immediately. With a smirk, Emily said, "After all the help you provided, it's so cold, right? Maybe Dad, in the end, preferred me over his two serious elder daughters. That's impossible." Before I could respond, my mother interrupted with an inappropriate grin. "Clearly, Emily is more adorable, though. Your father always stayed home and had no hobbies. He surely saved a lot, right, Mom? Even quit her job because of the inheritance, and I took some time off work to enjoy the inheritance for a while." Without allowing me to say anything, they continued their conversation. My mother then informed me, "You, who have no job, won't get a penny from the inheritance. We plan to enjoy a vacation abroad for a while, so you should leave this place by then." Hurriedly, I countered, "Wait a minute. Do you genuinely believe what you're doing is right?" Without waiting for me to finish, both my mother and Emily firmly responded, "Shut your mouth. It's a waste of time trying to take the inheritance from us. With your father gone, we'll do as we please. Your role here is done. Please leave this house promptly. To think that after all you sacrificed for Dad, this is what you get. There was no need to go to such lengths for such an inept father. It's pointless to regret and think about it now." Upon hearing those words, any remaining bond I felt for my mother and Emily was completely severed. I couldn't forgive them for speaking that way about my beloved father. Holding back what I wanted to say, I calmly told them, "I understand your thoughts. From now on, I can't imagine living together with you two. I'll gladly leave." Despite their initial surprise at my acceptance, the two soon smiled smugly together. "Good to know. Once you leave this house, never rely on us again. Our relationship ends here. Whatever happens to you, we want no part in it. Don't even think of contacting us." Receiving this intense sentiment from my mother, I packed only my essentials and left the house. A few days after the inheritance discussion, something unexpected happened. I received a call from my mother, the same person who claimed she would cut off contact with me. When I answered, she immediately confronted me in anger. "What have you done? Where has all the money from your father's account gone? Why are you suddenly calling? Didn't you say you wouldn't contact me?" Silence. "This is an emergency. Return your father's savings immediately." "What are you talking about? I left the passbook at the old house, didn't I? I have no way of accessing it after I left, but the money in the account is definitely gone." Such a significant amount of his savings couldn't have disappeared so suddenly. I found it suspicious. Moving out swiftly without securing a job seemed to have led my mother to assume that I had mismanaged my father's money. "Mom, hadn't you ever checked the account balance before?" "Huh? I haven't bothered with such things." "I see. If you had, you would have noticed that Dad's savings weren't that much to begin with." "What do you mean his savings were?" "Oh, where did his retirement money go?" "Oh, we used it for our wedding ceremony and the new house." "Wedding? New house? I have no idea what you're talking about." I had been romantically involved with a man named Sean, who was responsible for the living service for my father. Our relationship started through our mutual care for my father. I informed my father about my relationship with Sean early on in our dating. When Sean proposed, I was overwhelmed with living and work responsibilities and couldn't make a decision. Upon learning the truth, my father said, "Care for yourself more than me. I want you to have a happy marriage," and he cheered me on. Despite my hesitations, he even started assisting with the wedding venue, selecting a new place to live, and looking for a new home. We had reserved a wedding date for the following year and signed a contract for a new apartment that my father liked. All of this occurred 6 months before we discovered his terminal cancer. As a gesture of gratitude, my father covered most of the costs for the wedding and the new apartment. That was the reason for the decrease in the account balance. Hearing the turn of events, my mother's voice trembled. She was clearly shaken. So there wasn't any inheritance for us to inherit in the first place, primarily just the family home. But given its location, we shouldn't expect the high selling price. Emily, having overheard the conversation, anxiously grabbed the phone from my mother. "Wait, so the financial assistance for your wedding is much more than the inheritance from Mom and me?" That seems to be the case. Dad knew about my marriage and me leaving the house. So maybe he didn't see a problem in leaving the family home to both of you. He might have used a significant amount for me and intended the inheritance to compensate for that. Could it be that the reason you quit your job was because your marriage had been decided upon? That's right. Sean is also involved in investment activities and is financially stable. He wanted me to become a full-time housewife. Also, I thought if I resigned early, I could focus on taking care of our father. I can't believe it. Why did you keep the news about your marriage and savings a secret from us? Taking a deep breath, I answered, "I thought about telling you several times, but every time, neither of you showed any interest and avoided the topic. Why didn't you stop me from taking a break from work or Mom from quitting her part-time job? How are we supposed to live now? When I wanted to talk to you after the funeral, wasn't it you and Mom who shut me down, saying, 'You can't expect anything from us'? But I thought family members should help each other out. When I was swamped with work and living, you were out having fun, neglecting Dad. How can I think of someone who said such mean things as family? Don't just say whatever is convenient for you." Shocked and speechless, Emily was caught off guard. Following that, my mother implored, "Ashley, the truth is, I've already paid for the trip. I'd also made various purchases, expecting the inheritance. So now I have no savings left. So what about it? I've already quit my part-time job, right? If we don't get any inheritance money, we won't have any money for next month. So until I find a new job, I hope you can lend us some. When you kicked me out of the family home, didn't you say you'd never come to me again, that our relationship was over, that you wouldn't interfere with whatever happens to me in the future? About that, neither of you ever helped when Dad and I were going through tough times. Now when you're in trouble, you want to rely on me. That's incredibly brazen. But if you don't help us now, what will we do?" Without waiting for my mother to finish, I ended the call and blocked their numbers. I was utterly disgusted by my mother and sister, who only claim to be family when they're in trouble. I decided to distance myself from these two. Later on, I heard from various people that although my mother and Emily had canceled their trip, since it was a last-minute cancellation, they couldn't get a refund. They've been barely scraping by, asking friends and relatives for money. They had to sell their house, but as I expected, they didn't get as much as they hoped. With the initial expenses for a new place and moving costs, they had hardly any money left. Emily returned to work, but because she asked her colleagues for money, her relationships at work became strained. She had planned to leave her job soon after finding a good partner, but because of the situation, that partner as well as other men distanced themselves. Her friends too. My mother tried to find another part-time job, but her previous workplace had already hired someone else, so it was hard for her to return. Due to her age, her job opportunities were limited. They managed their living expenses with my mother's meager part-time salary and Emily's earnings, slowly repaying their debts. Both of them seemed worn out. As for me, I was able to have a small wedding at the venue my father chose. The only regret is that my father couldn't be there for my wedding. but I believe he's watching over our happy moments from somewhere. My married life with Sean has been smoother than expected. We're enjoying peaceful and fulfilling days together. I'm eternally grateful to my father for supporting my relationship with Sean and giving me this opportunity. I've had to build a peaceful life with my husband, always remembering my gratitude